Welcome to the Wheaton Center. May I help you?
Is Malcolm here?
Malcolm is. He's in our museum.
Oh, goodness me. Well, that's very remarkable how you managed to track me down, even in America. Well, talk about a spell in the library. Now, you have come, in my view, to one of the most enchanted places in the world. This would be a desk to write at. This is C.S. Lewis's own desk. And look, the desk on which The Hobbit and various parts of The Lord of the Rings, and of course letters from the man at this desk talking to the man at this desk, Lewis, back and forth. So you tracked me down to the Wade Center, one of my favorite places, but come this way. Now, there's the Pauline Mains map. But what about this then? This, I have to tell you, is the wardrobe. The wardrobe could take us, come around this way. Just see the fur coats. The temptation is almost overwhelming. But let's come to another place which, a bit like the wardrobe, can take us into any world we like. Come and follow me. I'm so glad you found me here. This is simply one of the best places in the world. So, it's a collection of Lewis and Tolkien and Charles Williams and Owen Barfield, Dorothy Sayers, George MacDonald, G.K. Chesterton. Come away in. Now, here is a library where almost every book is a kind of portal to another world. All the things you might want on Lewis and Tolkien. Here's the, now look, here's all the Tolkien. And I think what we should do, we ought to take the opportunity. This is the superb scholarly edition by Verlyn Flieger and Douglas Anderson of Tolkien's seminal essay on fairy stories that goes right to the heart of why it is that a made-up story, why it is that a secondary world, a sub-creation, you called it, might nevertheless. Come and have a seat. Oh, I see we've got the fire. There's nothing like sitting by a decent warm fire with an excellent book. This was the great essay that really set out the basis as a kind of profound, it's more than an apologia, it's a theology of the imagination. And of course, embedded in this essay is a little bit of Tolkien's poetry. And since we saw Tolkien's desk and Lewis's desk, the actual desks on which they wrote, let's just look again at the bit which embeds a bit of poetry written by Tolkien to Lewis about the nature of our lordship, as he calls it, the kind of sovereign joy and power and authority that God's given us to be creators. He's defending what he calls the legitimacy. He says, as for its legitimacy, the legitimacy of this whole creative endeavor, I will say no more than quote a brief passage from a letter I once wrote to a man who described myth and fairy story as lies, though to do him justice, he was kind and confused enough to call fairy story making breathing a lie through silver. Well, that was all on that famous conversation between Tolkien and Lewis and Dyson, and of course, thanks to Tolkien and Dyson, and thanks to Owen Barfield in no small measure, Lewis came to discover that they were not lies breathed through silver. They were something far more. Anyway, this is what Tolkien wrote to Lewis. Now he gives scholarship the kiss of life with a verse and goes from prose to poetry. Here's Tolkien to Lewis. Dear sir, I said, although now long estranged, man is not wholly lost, nor wholly changed. Disgraced he may be, yet is not dethroned, and keeps the rags of lordship once he owned. Man, sub-creator, the refracted light through whom is splintered from a single white to many hues and endlessly combined in living shapes that move from mind to mind. Though all the crannies of the world we filled with elves and goblins, though we dared to build gods and their houses out of dark and light, and sowed the seed of dragons, 'twas our right, used or misused. That right has not decayed. We make still by the law by which we're made. We are creative people made by a creative God. He goes on to say, fantasy is a natural human activity. It certainly does not destroy or even insult reason, and it does not either blunt the appetite for nor obscure the perception of scientific verity. On the contrary, the keener and clearer is the reason, the better fantasy will it make. That's wonderful, the marriage again of reason and imagination. This glorious edition. And what a place to read those words. What a place to hear them. I'm delighted that, having not found me in my obscure little house in North Norfolk, by great endeavour, you've managed to track me down right to and find me here at Wheaton College in Illinois at the Marion Wade Center. It's a pleasure to have you join me here. Cheers.